To you, Danielle.
Thanks, Felicia. Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. I'm going to hit the buttons here and then going to get rid of my keyboard tray. Thanks for being here. Today's going to be a really fun workshop. This is a classic design that I'm sure you guys have seen versions of this many, many times in different configurations. And it's one that is, I call it a classic because it's been a way to showcase crystal that's been out there for a while, but I've never done one of my own for our classes. And I thought now there's these beautiful Bicone crystals and we have our gorgeous 3-packs, and it all just came together as something that I felt like just needed to be, right? And so I did a little bit of research and I came up with what I think is my favorite configuration. There's a lot of, I mean, when I say a lot, I mean a lot of ways you can take a design like this. The basic premise of this stitch is that you create points in a net and you link those points row by row by row. You can work this stitch in a lot of ways. You can work it, you know, in a thin row by row configuration. You can also work it long, meaning you do one really big column and then you stitch back, right? So many things. And you can make your netted points crystals, or you can come back later and put the crystals in between the net, which is another cool look. And it also lifts the crystal off your skin, which when it comes to bicones is kind of cool because, you know, they're not like sharp or anything, but it's kind of, I prefer the feeling of a seed bead against like as a wrist, or even like especially as a necklace. So this actually lifts the crystal off of the back. So the back is like basically just flush seed beads, and then the front is all crystal. And then of course you can do this without crystal. It is a beautiful stitch by itself. So the goal today will be to introduce you to, especially if anyone's new to netting in general, I'm just going to introduce netting. Oh, thanks, Felicia. And then also just to explain, not only teach you this specific design, but give you that, you know, tools to expand it and make it your own and add it and change it up. And so what is here on the mat are all the basics that I used. So I grabbed a set of seed beads in size 10 Czech, and everything here on the mat was worked in size 10, just so I could show you comparisons with an apples to apples bead size. But you're not limited to working with 10-0. You can work with 11-0, 8-0, 6-0. You can change up bead sizes. All of those things are possible. There's a yes answer to every question you have about, can I do this with this stitch? It's yes. You just have to play with it, right? So today's configuration is very, very nice for a 4mm bicone. And that's what these counts were tailored to. But there are a lot of versions out there that are tailored to like a 6mm bicone. There's some that have like, you know, they use the bicones as the edging or as the center point pieces. So you can also do some of the embellishing of the edges is particularly stunning. So we may need to do this again in future classes in just different ways. But just to keep it focused, what I have here is a basic single bead size configuration, meaning the seed bead base is all one size. It's all size 10 Czech. I use 3 colors just because I had 3 colors and they're pretty. And you can use all one color. You can use more than 3 colors too, whatever works for you. Like here's a 2. I used 2 colors here. These are the ones that we were using in the suede bracelet. So same colors there. I just grabbed my leftovers and worked with those. Here's another one of our 3-packs. This one, I don't know if it's coming across color-wise for you guys, but in person, this looks like fire. It literally just looks like a fire bracelet. It is the coolest thing. And so definitely I want to finish that. And I might not embellish it. I might just leave it as is, like just the net. But the color, I'm going to talk about the color for this one. This was inspired by a trip I took with my mom many years ago now, or like more than a decade ago. But we went on a little Alaska cruise. And we were up in what's called Glacier Bay, and watching the glaciers calve. And what I went up there expecting to see, you know, glaciers that were just like look like crystal or ice, right? But they're like a lot of them are blues and aquas and really cool colors. And we saw like a bald eagle land on this like floating icebergs. And it sounds like if you put your ear on like a cup of soda, like if you just poured your soda for the first time and it's got ice kind of jingling around in a glass and you put your ear next to it, the whole ocean sounded like that. And it was just the coolest thing. So this was the first thing I thought of when I put the ice crystals on the blue. And this mix, of course, is the one that's in the handout. And it is one of my favorite Czech mixes. It has a really cool luster finish. And with the opaque, like kind of medium blue. And then here's an iris blue, like a peacock blue. So all of this just kind of comes together really cool. And these are little stripes that I made. But you can, of course, do that any way you like. And I'm going to talk about that as we go. And so the basics for like what to stitch on. Wildfire thread, use 0.006, not the 8, if you're working with the 10-0 Czech. I think the 0.06 is a little bit better. And then for colors, I actually worked with a lot of different colors here of the Wildfire. So I think this on the blue is really stunning, but I might work it with black today so you can see what I'm doing. And on this one, I use beige, the beige color. And that came out really nice. At the end of finishing this one, I threw some findings on and I went all out because this is a pretty crystal heavy design. So I put the sterling on there. And I'm working with a size 12 beading needle. You can work with 12 or 10. I think when in here we said size 12, just because anytime you have lots and lots of passes, it can kind of be helpful, but I still think a 10 will work. And let's see, last but not least, you'll need some scissors. And then I want to talk about crystals and counts really quick before I jump in. So in this design, you're going to need, so this design, basically I needed 3 strands. And when you buy them, they come with 2. So basically 1.5. In total, this is a beaded length of 6 inches. And I used 92 crystals. When you buy these at the store, they come with 62. So you're going to need a couple of them, unless you change up the configuration, but basically it was 92. The length of crystals per inch is 16 crystals per inch. So if you are trying to calculate out making it a longer or shorter, there's something that might help with that. And then we'll talk more about this kind of at the end when how to change it up, because if you've noticed, these are all different widths. You can change the count. And we're doing the 15 bead start today, which is the 16 crystals per inch, but you can also do a 9 bead start, which is this one, or you can really go crazy and do a 21 bead start. And that's going to be a really heavy design. Like it's going to have a lot of crystal, right? But this is one that was made with a 21 bead start. And again, all these counts are tailored to a 4mm crystal. And they are absolutely adjustable, meaning if you have a different size bead that you want to work with, all you need to really do is, once you've got the premise down that we're going to do today, is just play with your counts and you'll get there. And of course, if you have questions or you want me to try something, you can always message me and I'll try it too. And I'll see if I can come up with a solution if you get stuck. Sometimes it just takes me a couple of, like even hours just to play with something and see, well, okay, that didn't work, so let me try that. Or sometimes one idea, of course, gives you another idea you didn't think of. But so here they are all together one more time. The one we're doing today, which is, these are the same. These are both the same number of counts. When you put the crystals on it, it kind of makes it a little bit, let me show you what I mean. It stretches it a little. So what you'll get when you add the crystals is it'll get a little bit less wide. And it does kind of dome just slightly, but not a lot. To give you an idea, I can show you this way. So not doming a heck of a lot, but just a little bit, just enough to make it a little less thick. But this is the same stitch, same size beads, same counts. Just this doesn't have its crystals yet. Here it is in a 9 start, and here it is in the 21 start. So all those together there. So try them, see what you think. Do this one today with me, and then play with those and see what you come up with. So I'm going to go ahead and get out thread. As far as thread, in the handout, I was saying to cut a lot, because you can work this back and forth from a midpoint, but also you can leave a big tail to do your crystal embellishing. And that's kind of what I did here. I have a sample ready to show adding thread, because I think we still want to see that. But if you leave a really long tail here and you work with a little bit more here, you might actually make it. And then the only time you might really have to add thread is if you wanted to make it longer than this, which this is only a beaded length of 6 inches. So think about that when you're working with thread, but then that said, don't cut too much, because then you get knots and that's frustrating. Adding thread is easy and we're going to do that. So what I'm going to do for demo purposes is something a little shorter. Because I've got a lot of samples here and I assume we're going to start it a few times. And my scissors are here. These are the same scissors I'm always using. They're from that Recollections. And they just cut Wildfire really nicely. Like surprisingly good for cutting Wildfire. But I've never used them to cut paper. And then I'm going to get some pliers here. You want to flatten your end of your Wildfire. This makes it like way easier. Go in the needle. And then just thread that. And it, depending on how much you're working with, if you're working with a really long length, go ahead and just pull a lot of it down from your needle spot there and fold over. And that'll make it easier just to kind of get your thread pulled through. And I'm gonna get the beads. So start with whichever color you like. It doesn't really matter, but I'm gonna stick with the pattern that I have in the handout. But I wanted to make sure everyone knows you can do anything you want, of course, and any pattern's possible. The pattern in the handout is this one, where we just have a different color every single row. So just basically every row I changed colors, and I did that in series. Here's one where I changed color every other row, so you get a more solid appearance of the beads. So you can see a more, 2 rows were worked in gold, then 2 rows were worked in silver, and so on. Same was done here. 2 rows were worked in each color. This one we're just working each row with a new color, and it really helps you see it and see what's happening. So just starting with my colors A. And I think I did this as my color B. And last but not least is my color C. And I'm wondering, they're too close. So what I'm going to do just for our demo here is swap that out with another color. They look very different to me on the mat, but looking up at my computer screen, they just don't look contrasted enough.
Danielle, I was just going to ask you if you had another 10-0 lying around.
I do. Luckily, I have a wall behind me of them. But
even if it's obnoxious color, it doesn't matter. Just it'd be easier for us to see the color, to see the changing. But yes, if you don't have another color, I'd be very surprised.
Yeah, I know you guys made sure I have lots of colors. So how do we feel about those? Or is there enough contrast between these two, or should I swap that one out too? I'm wondering, maybe I should swap that too. Let's do that.
Go wild.
Yeah, let's do, I don't know, is green different enough? I've got green here.
Sure.
Yeah, let's do green. Okay. Orange would be even better. Orange handy. I think that's going to be okay. Yeah, that's standing out really nicely. Okay. So this, again, we're going to do the start that basically gives you 2 crystals per row, which is a 15 bead start. And the counts are really weird. So really what you're doing is multiples of 6, but that first row, you need the extra turning beads. So you're adding 3 basically. And I know it's math. I promise not too much math. But if you want, you can just memorize that. Hey, if I want my bracelet to look like that, I just need a string of 15 beads for my first strand here. And also optionally, before I go too far, add a stop bead, especially if you're leaving that super long tail to do your crystal with. You want to add a little stop bead. And to do a stop bead, you string the bead and then go back through it and then pull tight. And it acts like a little knot for you. And that can be helpful. So put that stop bead on and then go ahead and pick up 15 beads. And I do that in a series of 5. So there's my 5. And here's my next 5. And 5 more. Okay, so there's that. And again, that's 15 beads. And now I'm going to switch to my next rose color. And so after every turn, you're always going to have an extra bead in your connection beads. So with every turn, it's 6, and then you do 5 and 5, and then you turn again and it's 6. So I'm going to pick up 6 beads here. And this just keeps your edge straight. The reason for the extra bead is so that each side will have 3. And you'll see as we keep going why that happens. But you'll want to do 6 on your turns, meaning when you're starting your each new row. So there's 6 beads. And now you want to go back through the 3rd bead. So we're heading back in this direction. And we're going to skip 1 and 2. And we're going to go through our 3rd bead here. And it might not tighten up for you exactly on this row, but don't worry about it. But you're going for something a little bit like that. Little loop headed through that 3rd bead back. Oh, hey, Cindy. Glad you made it. And so now the next set, we're going to just pick up 5. So that's 5 beads. And we're going to go through the 6th bead. So you want to skip the next 5 and go through the 6th bead. And I've been tightening it after I go every single time. You can do that all at the end if you want. Just 5 more. And skip 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and go through your 6th bead. And there's that's the first 2 rows basically. But what you're seeing here looks really flat and not super interesting. Go ahead and tighten it up. You can pull on your stop bead, pull on your working thread. And now we're going to work back. We're going to work back through and pick up the points. So each of these 5 beads has a center point, right? So we're going to pick up, again, we're doing a turn, starting a new row. So we need an extra bead to keep the edge flat. So there's 5 plus 1, 6 beads. And find your center point, which is the 3rd bead. So I skipped the first 2 that I added in my last row. I'm going to go through the center or the 3rd bead from that last row. And pull tight. And you'll get something that looks a little bit like that. And again, still looking wonky, but don't worry. It's going to get to where it looks a little more recognizable after a couple more rows. And you can always, something I watch for when I'm stitching is this gap right here. The gap between the 2nd and the 3rd bead. To fix that, if you want to, you can take the row we just added, the 6 we just added, and pull back here. Pull on that. And then just kind of hold all those beads in your hand as you tighten this part. And it might clean it up a little bit and make that a tighter point. And you'll see me do that throughout. I do that a lot as I'm going. Here's 3, 4, and 5. So there's our 5 beads. And don't worry, we're going to do this a bunch of times. It's getting started, it's the hard part, but once you're there, you've got it. And again, we're finding our center point here, which is our middle bead of those 5, right? So you're skipping the next 4 from the last row, 1, 2, 3, 4, and going through the 5th. I just look at it as, hey, that's the middle bead of the next segment. That's how I remember it for those. So there's our next one. And last but not least, let's pick up 5 more. And now what we're going to do here, because this one has 6, right? We're skipping the first 2 and going through the 3rd. So skip 1 and 2 and go through the 3rd. And then pull tight. So there's that 3rd row. So let's work a few more and then we'll start again. I'm going to pick up 6 now because I'm starting my next turn. I'm going to go back to the first color. There's 6. And I'm going to go ahead and go through. Oh, sorry, I'm off camera there. Sorry about that. We want to go through always that 3rd bead. So we're skipping the first 2 and going to the 3rd one. It also happens to be the midpoint of the 5 segment we made on the last turn there, for the last part of that last row. And pull tight. And again, here's an opportunity to tighten. Before we pull this tight, you can give this one more tug here and then pinch it and pull down. And now we want to pick up 5. Here's our 5. And then here we are again, finding the center point. There's that net. Let's pick up 5 more. And then 1, 2, and 3. Third bead here for the last one. And there's 4 rows. So it's starting to take shape. I really want you to be able to see it. So I think I'm going to continue on. Let's do like 2 more rows, and then we can go back and demo putting the start together again. But I think it makes sense to see how it really isn't super clear until you've got a lot of rows made that it is a net. So there's 6 because we're starting a new row, right? We're turning. And we're going through the center or the third bead, the last row we created. And again, things will get loose as you go through it. And what I do is I just go ahead and start pulling it through. And then I'll take this side and pull it one more time to tighten up that last row, and then pull there. Get that to sit together. Okay, so here's 5 beads. Skipping the 2, going through the 3rd for the next little segment there. Hold tight. And we got to do that one more time. And I'm going to go through the 3rd bead. So we're going 1, 2, and through the 3rd. Now, if you're not changing color with every row, like I'm doing here, the only thing that can happen, and let me make sure I didn't put too many beads. Oh, I put an extra bead. Sorry, guys. I was only supposed to do 5 there. I picked up an extra one. So let me take 1 off. So 5 beads through the center here. But sometimes the pitfalls that you can have is sometimes you'll accidentally count the bead from the row before as one of the beads you're skipping. And that happens a lot if you're working in the same color. But once you've done one bracelet, when you come back and do another one, you'll be okay. You'll be able to work it in a single color and it will be something you can see. It just takes a while to get the structure figured out. So we're doing a turn, so we need 6. Beginning of a new row, we always want 6, and we're going to skip the first 2 beads and go through the 3rd. And again, I want it to be tight, so I'm just going to pull on that and pull down. And I need 5. Center point there. And you could work this where the center point's even a different color, but I didn't really need that for the visual for myself. I think it would have actually been more confusing to figure out the center point from row 1. So I feel like this is the easier way for me, but by all means, if it makes more sense to do a different colorway for your first design, I think that's totally great. But there, it's starting to go, and you can start to see where those crystals are going to sit. So you see the crystals are going to go in between the net points. Here's an example of one. And that's where we're going to put crystals. 1, 2, and every row is going to have 2 crystals here and here, and then the next row they'd be here and here, and then they'd be back down again. They kind of go in a zigzag. See, there's 2 in this row, 2 in that row. But that's the whole thing. You would just keep going for a very sounds like a very long time. It actually goes pretty fast, I think. But I'm going to go ahead and set this aside for now and just start a new strand so we can see one more time starting it. And if there's any feedback for me about these colors or anything, just let me know. I think they were clear, but it never seems as clear to me on the screen as it does on my mat. So yeah, just let me know.
Danielle, I can definitely see colors very well.
Okay.
I'm happy you're starting over again because the first 2 rows I was a little confused. So I'm looking forward to the do-over.
Yeah, in the counts, it makes sense once you have the structure kind of programmed into your brain a little bit. The first rows counts make sense because you're basically adding in the beads you need for the foundation row.
I think
And
I'll have to have that little bit of a hum that when you turn at 6, you have to just sort of keep singing that little song, making a turn, add 6.
Yeah, exactly. And it has to do with, you know how like in, okay, so like in a brick stitch design, you know how the first time you do a row, you have 2, and then the next one, you're borrowing 1 from the row before, or sorry, the stitch before.
Yes.
It's super similar to that. And it's why there's an extra on the edge. Because in there actually is the same number of beads every row, but you're borrowing the one from the segment before it.
Understood.
Yeah.
I'll watch again.
And I think it's honestly like once you tried it, you'll be like, oh yeah, it just makes sense. But it's like really hard to explain, but you totally get it when you do it. I don't know if you guys will have the same experience. Let me know. But I'm going to go ahead and string a stop bead again, and the stop bead is optional but helpful. And leave that stop bead with I left a 40-inch tail, and that tail again is for putting on crystal. With that said, you could always weave in, so it's not critical or crucial. It's just whatever works for you. So there's my stop bead. That's just going through the bead and then going through it again in the same direction. Makes it kind of like a little knot that you can pull off later. You can slide it around. Like if you've got your ruler out and you're measuring the tail length and stuff, you can slide it. It locks everything into place for you. And then you'll want to string 15 of your color A beads. And there's the next one. And one more set. Okay, so there's 15. And now I'm going to start my next row. I want to pick up 6 of my color B. Bring that down. And then I'm going to count back to my 3rd bead from those first 15 we strung. And we're going to head in the direction going backwards, right? So I'm going to skip these first 2 and then go through the 3rd one. And things will be a little wonky. Don't worry too much about it. Just like tighten everything up as you go if you want, or at the end. But basically you're going for something that looks just like a little P shape kind of. And then we're going to need to pick up 5 beads. So there's 5. And now we're going to skip 5. So we're skipping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to go through the 6th bead. And it can be a little tricky to see it. So there's that one. And one more set. There's our 5. And I'm going to skip 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and go through my 6th bead. And it looks like, and this will happen occasionally, I only skipped 1, 2, 3, 4. But if you get to the end and you have an extra bead you weren't expecting, look back and see what happened. I only went through the 5th bead there. So I need to come back through that and make sure I'm skipping the right number. 6. Skipping 5 and going through the 6th there. And then the same thing again. There's 5 beads. And counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Going through the 6th. And I recommend making your stop bead a different color so that it doesn't confuse you when you get back here. It can be tempting to just have your stop bead be that same blue that I'm working with, or your same color A. I think it really helps to make it a different color. So it's clearly, hey, that's my stop bead. It's not part of what I'm doing. And that just helps keep it clear for me. But there's that first 2 rows. So again, we strung 15 in one color. And then we picked up 6 beads which are the beginning of our row 2. We skipped the first 2 beads and went through the 3rd. And then from there, we picked up 5 beads, skipped 5, went through the 6, and did that again. Picked up 5, skipped the next 5, and then went through the 6th bead there. And so that's the 2 rows there. And I want to show you really quick a little bit about the colors and things you can do for your patterns. But here's a visual of what we've been doing. So we've been stringing those 15, adding the 6, skipping 2, going through 1, adding 5, skipping 5, going through the 6th, same again. From here, we're starting row 3. I started row 3 in another color. And it's the same thing, start with 6, go through the 3rd, 5, go through this, skip 5, right? And one of the things also to note, once you've started to work this row here, the 5 you skip include that bead from the row before it. So really what I start doing is I start thinking about net points, right? I start thinking about what's the center bead of my next segment. Because the 5 you skip basically are the 2 and then the 1 and then 1, 2. So see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you go through the center. So from here, the way I'm visualizing it is what's my center point of that segment. That just really helps me figure it out. And so for color pattern, I did something kind of weird with the colors. I was heavier on the color B. So I would do A, B, C, B, A, and that made it look like a wave to me. I was trying to make it look like the colors kind of, but then if you wanted to just do every other color, which is what I did here, I just basically did ABC, ABC. So what I'm going to try to do now is stick with this so you can kind of see the difference. So I need to go back to color B when I add my 4th row. But it really doesn't matter, like any colors that you want to use and in any configuration. After you've made one, I really do think that one of the prettiest looks is making the counts 2 rows of the same color like that. So you get the more of a color pop. But it helps to do it in 3 different colors when you're just getting started. So here's 6 beads. We're starting a new row. And we're going to skip the first 2, which is 1 and 2, and we're going to go through the 3rd bead. Oops, sorry, I'm supposed to be working into the yellow beads. And now I'm going to pick 5. And then again, just visualizing what's my center point for this next segment. It's the 3rd bead. And I'm do that one more time. 5 beads, skip the first 2 beads, and go through the 3rd. Okay, and so now I'm going to work back to yellow. This is how I did the glacial bracelet. 4, 5, and 6, which is the color B. Yours will be a different one of those blues. And then again, just finding that center. And I like to pull this through. It's still kind of wonky and loose, right? And then tightening here. Pull tight. And then pull tight. Here's 5, center point. And 5 more. 2, 3. And what that does is it leaves 3 beads on the side, and that is a design choice. It's something you can change, right? You can change the counts of your side beads. It's just I wanted them both to have 3s on the side. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to color A. 4, 5, and 6. Again, we're going to skip the first 2 and go through the 3rd. And then I'm going to pull that tight, see if I can get this to work. A little extra help here. And now it's 5 from here on out. There's 5. And I'm going to skip the first 2, go through the third. That's the midpoint there. And then here's 5 more. Skip those first 2 and go through the third. And so on. And so my next color will be yellow, and then green, and then yellow, and then blue. And that's how I did the wave, which I just thought was neat. It's a little bit more to remember, but it's kind of cool looking. Tighten here, and just pull down. And that was 6 beads there. Now we're doing 5. Midpoint. Five more. And third bead here, the last segment there. So it's coming along. It's really pretty. And another cool thing you can do is you can work back in this direction. If you left a really long tail, you can take the stop bead off and just start working back that way. You can add your crystals with your tail. So this is the same stitch we did for the round bracelet that we were doing in October. But this is one of those weird ones where like the flat stitch, I think personally, is harder than the round. And it's usually the other way around, right? Usually the round stitch is harder. This one for me, it's tricky because of the sides, right? That's what really throws me off personally, is like the sides. And there's a lot of different designers have different ways of doing that, handling the edge. Some of them are using crystal embellishment, meaning they're using a crystal and doing a turn, like they're putting a crystal on and then coming back through the crystal and then starting back in the other direction. That's more advanced than what I'm doing here today, but it's something we can grow into if this is something we love after the next hour and 20 minutes. If we feel like we want to see more, I can add more classes that have that. But once you've got this, that really opens the doors, like for you to understand. It'll give you the geometry, and then you'll be like, oh yeah, and it'll all make sense to you when you see what the other designers are doing. You'll be able to kind of like reverse engineer it. And so from here, I want to check in and see how you guys are doing. Should I start again? Keep going? Any other questions about it?
Danielle, they were just asking very simply, is this considered the netting stitch?
Yeah, this is netting. This is flat netting. That said, there's so many versions of flat netting that I couldn't even possibly even name them all. And every once in a while I see one I would have never thought of. Because just think of how much you can do with this. Like you can, all you really need is a repetition with a center point, right? And the rest of it's just kind of like up to you, whatever you want to do.
Perfect. I'm not seeing on the sidebar a request to show it starting a second time.
Okay.
So maybe we could just keep going, and then at the end, if someone's still lost, we can show it a third time.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Well, let's do this. Why don't I put on maybe, I don't know, 4 more rows, and then we'll throw some crystal on this one. And I also have another sample over here I can add crystal to.
That sounds good.
And then there's adding thread, of course. Folks are gonna want to see that. I have that ready too. But just for the sake of demoing the pattern, I'm gonna just throw a few more rows on. So here's 6 beads, and we're gonna turn, go through the third. And here's 5. Skipping 2 and going through third one, which is just that center point, and one more time. Skipping 2 and going to the third. And I'm going to switch back to yellow. So basically you're just working up and down, right? And it does, to me, just looks kind of like a little wave going. And I got a loose spot, so I'm gonna just tighten it there. It starts to get easier. I think after you have a good inch of stitching, not only do you have something to hold on to that makes a little more, it helps you with your tension as you go, but it also just starts to make the structure starts to be visible. Whereas up until like right about this point, I don't feel like it was super obvious, the structure there. So keep going through here. Love it. And now we're back to A. So again, starting a new row. You want to put on 6 beads. Going through the center here. And then 5.
Danielle?
Yeah.
Carol would like to know, how is your tension? Will hers is a little bit loose. Will it get tighter when you add the crystals?
Yeah, it'll tighten up when you add the crystals. But one thing you might want to be careful of is this next one. Whenever you're starting a new row, I wouldn't say it's super tight tension, but it's definitely a little firmer than I might use for like a herringbone, for example. Let's see what I got. So I've got my 6 beads here. It's this turn here where things get wonky. And there might be another way to tighten it up, but what I've been doing is when I go ahead and bring my needle through my center point bead, what's happening in an exaggerated version is I'm loosening up everything I just did. Right? So to fix that, I pull here right before I bring that stitch through. So I'll show that again. I'm going to come through the 3rd bead and just go ahead and pull it through. But right before I pull this to close that loop up, I might pull on this one more time, which is the side that we were exiting before. And then maybe even just hold all the beads in my hand like that and give that a pull. And that can help a lot with particularly getting this bead to pop up like that. You see how these kind of pop on the side? Every time you get, so when I get one more row on over here, if I've gotten that tension tight enough, it should pop like that. So here's the next 5. And so for this part, let me see, for tension for this, it's less, a little bit less, less of a worry. I don't think I'm pulling as hard there because everything just kind of does what you want it to do. It's got nowhere to go because the other stitch is locked in above it. So it doesn't move when I go through it. But here's 5, skip 2, go through the 3rd here. And when you're trying to get through the right bead, one of the things that helps me with getting my needle where I want it is when you have your needle and you're holding it, if you're holding it back here and you're trying to get it to do something up here, you have a lot less control. So whenever I'm in a tight spot and I'm trying to get it to do what I want, I'll move my hand all the way down to the front of the needle and then find the exact bead I want. And that can really help. It's kind of like with a writing utensil. You wouldn't hold your pen like way up here, right? And be like writing with your pencil like that. No, you come down and you write like that for precision. It's the same with your needle. It can really help you get through, especially if your tension's tight like mine. Relatively tight for these, especially these turns here. So I'm gonna grab 6 beads now. And I'm just gonna skip the first 2. Go through the 3rd. See, things are loosening up there a little bit. So I'll just give it a little tug on that side. Sometimes you won't need it. I don't know, it really depends. But you'll see it. And there's the center. And And there's my third bead there. And there, I've already done an 1.25 inches. Let's see. About 1 inch, actually. When the crystals are in, it's going to do this. Just a little bit. So not quite 1.25 inches, but a good inch there. And how many rows was that? That's 11 rows. So between, I would have said 10 rows per inch, but 10 to 11 rows per inch. Because keep in mind, it's going to do this to you. It's going to move a lot. And the thinner ones, this is really weird. Thinner ones, my opinion, stretch more than the wider ones do. It's kind of interesting. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to put on 2 more rows for symmetry, and then I'll just maybe put some crystals on this little square. And then then we'll probably be at the hour mark, so we'll take a little break. And then you guys can come back armed with questions, and we'll do like adding thread and maybe put some crystals on one of my other samples that's bigger. So we've got 6 there. And again, I'm working back into the third bead. That's pretty good. Oops, I should have picked up yellow. Sorry, guys. I meant to do yellow there. Here we go. So there's 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then through the third bead. And now 5. So pretty. This is actually one of those stitches that you, once you've got it down, you don't really think about it, and you'll blink and it'll be like, you'll be halfway done. Okay, now I can go to my favorite color, which is this iris blue. And I'll share a spring idea I had for her design that involves this color with turquoise. Because this color looks absolutely like a peacock color. And then combine that with a different shade of blue, a turquoise, and like a violet. And then bringing in some yellow maybe. It's going to be really pretty. Here's my center point, 5, and last 5. All right, so we just did all that in a very short period of time. So you can see, like, it really doesn't take long to make one of these. They come along pretty quick, and they're gorgeous. And this by itself is a beautiful design. Like, you could just leave it like that and just wear it. But if you want to put crystals, what I found happened to me is I had a bit of working thread left on this side, and I had a lot of tail on this side because I left a big tail. And so I kind of just worked back to meet adding my crystals. So let me grab a crystal we can see. Let's see. Let's go for, let's see. Is this visible enough on this design, do you think? Or I could grab a red. Red might be better.
Danielle, red might be obnoxious, but easier to see.
Oh yeah. Let's do that.
Sharon's laughing with me. It's over the top, but we'll see it. And really, if you're going to add crystals, we want people to see them.
Oh yeah.
Unless you're Cindy and she's ordering like every color under the rainbow. We don't know what's going on over there now.
I would love to see a rainbow color of this, actually. That would be very cool. You make every row, you could go from red to red, orange, yellow, right? Just kind of hue it all the way up.
Yeah, let's assign that to Cindy.
It sounds good. Oh, sorry, I've got a little knot here. So I'm not sure how I did that. Phew. Okay, my knot came out. So I'm going to switch my needle to my tail side. I want to be able to show, you know, what it says in the handout, which is recommending starting from the tail, but it doesn't matter which side you start from. You'll get there. I'm going to take my stop bead off. So that's the bead we used at the beginning to kind of make our row knot wiggle. Pull that off. And then same thing as before, get this ready to thread. So we're going to need one of these. And we're going to need a needle. There we go. The needle gods are not on my side today. There we go. Okay, so from here, we need to get to the net points. And each of the crystals is going to come from a net point. And there'll be a spot where you can't add one. And that'll be one where there's no bead. Basically, what you're looking for are ones where they're facing this direction, right? On the edges, they're going the wrong direction. So we can't really easily get a bead in there unless we did like a little circle thing. I mean, you could, and you'll see as we start stitching, you could come out of this bead and you could put your crystal on, you could go through it and you could turn and come back to the crystal. But I didn't do that for simplicity's sake so that it's like one swoop, you're stitching on. I just made it so that they zigzag. So you have an open, every other row, you have an open there. It's your design preference. You can try it. This way you don't have to do anything funny with the side beads. And if this helps, it also really helps me to see it this way too. But we're going to need to kind of like zip around to get where we need to be. We want to be exiting from one of those, and it could be different depending on where you leave off over here. So whichever side you're on, you just remember you just need to get to one of these and then start adding your crystal. And it kind of doesn't matter what direction you head in from, right? You can head in from either direction. Just that goal is to be exiting from one of these. So where you could get a straight shot to put two. And then when you're making your turns, it's not intuitive, but you're going to have to make a turn out and then back down. And I'll show you that too. It'll make sense when you're stitching it, but it's not easy-ish to explain. But so from here, remember, I'm aiming for this one. I want to start putting crystal here and here. So I'm going to go through from where I'm exiting here. I'm going to go through these green ones. And then I'm going to come up through the green ones here. And I'm going to exit through that yellow one. And so however you get there, if you're coming from the tail side, that will be your path. You'll just come in through this way, back up through that way, through there. You can get a crystal. Jump over to the next one that is the next net point there. And as far as tension, here's a really good spot to use some lighter, gentler tension. If you pull really tight, you're going to bring it like that. And it's going to be cinchy and crunchy looking. So you want to just kind of let it be a little gentle. Some people use a little size 15 seed bead here, but I didn't think it needed it. I thought it was okay without, especially once you get a lot on. It can start to look really bulky if you have another, and it kind of detracted from seeing the crystal, and I wanted the crystal to be my feature. So I just went straight to crystal. But that said, it's up to you, like what you like and what you think will look good, but a lot of people do that. So here's my next crystal. Again, we're going to have 2 crystals per row, and they're going to zigzag. So there's my 2 in that row. And I know it looks weird. I've got this hanging out over here, but this one is going to be empty now. And we're going to fill these 2. So from here, we need to get to there. So from there, if you were to go this direction, it would put you in the wrong spot. So what you want to do is just kind of like, sometimes you'll have to weave back. I hope that makes sense. Sometimes forward, sometimes back. But I'm going to go this way. Oh, sorry. Moving my goals to get to there. And so that's the way to go there. So hopefully that makes sense. I have a hard time explaining it. But from where we were here, if you go here, it can be really confusing. And sometimes you'll try to exit from this one and put a crystal here, but you'll have skipped a row. So just be cautious that when you go over this direction, that you come back down and you're going through this one. And any questions about that, please jump in the chat, because I know that's a really confusing, like, little step there. But and honestly, I had to think about it because it's not intuitive. But so there's that. And again, we're going crystal into the next one. Okay. And so from here, you guessed it, our next net point is the yellow. So we need to get to this one, right? We want to get to that bead. And so again, just the only caution I offer is that overshooting your row, right? So here we're going to go through these. And then a lot of folks will think, oh, hey, I'm done. I can just start going through here. But you'll have skipped that last row. So you have to head back. And then you'll get to your yellow bead. Heading back in that direction. And please let me know if there's questions about that, because it's super confusing. But here's the net point to net point. Oops. And I keep going off camera. Sorry about that. Here's the next one. And chasing crystals on the mat. Hang on. Got it. Okay. And so again, jumping over here. And so there it is. They're all sitting right in between the net points, and we're getting 2 per row. From here, my next net point is in my blue beads, right? So I want to come up through the sides. Here's my side beads. And down. And from here, again, remember, this isn't, we don't want to go like that, right? We want to travel backwards. Through that net point there. And again, it doesn't matter what direction you've come from, but you may find you have to weave around differently to get to that point. So there's that one. And there's the blue. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I'll keep going to, let's add another row, and then I was going to start working from this side so you can see getting there again, you know, from wherever you are in the work, that there's a way to get there. So coming through here, down, find that net point. And it's just so pretty. And as you get more and more crystals on, it just makes that netting pop more. You see it so much more. See how it added some length and everything. So it definitely, it's just a very cool stitch. I'm going to switch over here now. So I pulled my needle off. I'm just leaving that one. Let's pretend it got short. And we want to work back from what we have left on the other side. Same thing. We're going to just make sure we get to the right netting point. The only thing you want to think about is basically how to get there, right? So from here, I left off exiting from that yellow bead there. You guys can see that yellow bead. And so I'm going to head down. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, I didn't put any crystals in my first row. That's kind of important because that's how we're going to put our clasp on. And sorry, I meant to mention that earlier. But I didn't put crystals in the first row because I want to be able to do that. And that said, you can, but you would just have to dodge, right? So you'd have a crystal there and your clasp would be kind of like touching the crystal. So leaving that first row empty is good. I think anyway, but you can definitely still make it work even if you didn't do that.
Danielle, would you have reinforced the first row before you add the findings?
Yeah, definitely that would also be good too. And I didn't do it there, but that would have been a good step to add. I'm trying to see if I got the row count here, the 60. Yeah, that would be something good to include. I think it is not stated here. So, and I didn't do it. I'm not even 100% sure I did it on this one. Let's look. You guys, I didn't. It's just one strand there. No, there's two. There's two. I must have come back and woven in another. It looks like I did make an extra pass through it, at least on one side. But yeah, so let's do that. Let's do that here so we can see it. What I'm going to do is weave back to where I was. Thank you for that. It's a good suggestion. Wildfire is so strong, I forget. I sometimes forget that that's important. Okay, so from here, let's say you wanted to reinforce this before, you can just go ahead and got to make a turn. So I should go back through those. Getting there's hard. Here's one way to get there, and I'm just feeling it out. But there it goes. So there's the last two little loops there are reinforced. I'm going to go back through one more time and get back to where I was. But there's one way you could do it if you wanted to reinforce that, which is actually a good practice. And I just didn't think of it. I wonder if it might make sense to do that at step one. What do you guys think? Like if the very, very first step, when you created that very first two rows, if you looped back through it one more time, that might save doing it now, but either way works. Okay. Now I'm back to where I was. And I'm ready to create row one of crystals here. And again, I'm skipping these. I'm going to skip those and I'm going to weave back through my greens to get to the green net point there. And we'll put the crystal on. So that was a lot of weaving around, but definitely you could absolutely do that. It makes sense. Okay, and so just traveling to the next one. And the next one is going to be that row with the yellow points, right? So we got to get there. There's the next one there. And so you would just keep going and then they would meet. So that's it in a nutshell for how to do the adding. I wasn't sure if anyone needed to see this again, maybe on another color. I do have this one here, which I thought was going to be so pretty, the topaz. Like a really beautiful Thanksgiving colors design. And then I have a single column which is basically going to be 1 bead per row. So it would just, they'll just zigzag down the center on a design like that. And then there's the fire bracelet, which honestly, I don't know if I want crystal on this one, because number one, it's going to use probably, let's see, gosh, a lot of crystal. And so I wasn't sure if I even wanted to embellish this one. It's just so pretty. But if I did, goodness,
Danielle,
look at that. Yeah,
I'm going to recommend we give everyone a quick comfort break
sure.
and give you a few seconds as well to get a glass of water or something. Everyone wants to know, if you start from the other side, how will you know that you'll line it up? You'll have
I
to
believe it will just automatically work because of the way this stitch is, but we can take a look at it. I'll keep going. But from here, you would basically be putting your, you'd be going through the net point here and here, here and here, and then here and here. It's just wherever you've left off. Because of the way the net points line up in the edges, it just happens that way. Does that make sense? I'll wait till everyone's back and I'll meet it.
Okay, so we'll have a quick break. Hey, Danielle, there's just a couple questions there for you.
Oh yeah, okay. I was checking out the chat a little bit and I saw lots of well, first of all, I wanted to congratulate Kylie said she had a great sale. So congratulations, Kylie. That's cool. It always feels really good, doesn't it? like when people like your work and they're like, they get excited about it and it all sells. It's always a bonus, right? Oh yeah, and I'm seeing Sharon, that's totally cool. The black crystals with clear crystals, that would be, oh man, that would be cool. Yes. You ever just want to make one in every color? That's something that I would love to do too. And the sky's the limit because there's a color, I think, for every single seed bead palette that you could make look really good with it. Another one I really wanted to do was, where the other bead was. Oh yeah, yeah. So like this palette, how cool would that be for spring? And then it has like a citrus feeling to me, like you put like a little lemon charm on it, or I don't know, it's neat. It has Mediterranean colors going there. So if everyone's back, I think what I'll do is I'll just keep going on this one. If everyone's okay with that, if you just want to see it. And then I did see some questions about the 9 start. And that's not a big deal to demo. We could demo that if you want. We've got time. So we could do that. And of course, adding thread, which you guys have seen me add thread a lot. If you all want me to skip showing that, I can, but I have one ready to go. It's this one where if you're working with a lot of rows, a lot of columns, you may find that you run out of thread faster. So I purposely did that here so I could show it. And so yeah, let's put crystals here. Let's keep going. So from here, I just want to keep going around. And also I saw Peggy was saying there's another way you could do that, but I didn't totally understand. So I was hoping I could maybe figure it out, that there was another way you could do this path. But yeah, I would love to know, because this feels kind of like circuitous, like you're going around a lot, right? Especially the reinforcing that felt well, kind of extreme to me to have to weave around that much, you know? But maybe there's a way that I'm just not seeing. I do miss the obvious a lot. Sometimes I'll just keep going. I'm like, oh yeah. And then, well, how come you didn't do this way? I'm like, I don't know. Because that would be awesome. And I didn't want to be awesome today. I don't know. I just don't always see it. But what I'm doing right here is I'm just going and adding crystals in between all the net points for each row. I'm just kind of weaving around. And this part, I do feel like it's a little confusing. It was really hard to diagram. I struggled with the diagram for it. Mostly because my net points in my diagram didn't come out as clear as I'd hoped. Okay, so we're down to our last row. It's gonna loop around here. And we're gonna cross paths with the row we left off at and hitting the net point there. I think so. If you're skipping the first row on both sides, I do believe they will line up and meet in the middle properly. Just because that's how one side's going to match the other, right? For how the structure is set up. That's my gut feeling. I have done it this way on all the other ones and it worked that way. But now that I've said that, I get worried. It worked for me every time, is what I can say. If I skip the first row, meaning they met in the center symmetrically. But definitely, I could experiment with it. I think it just makes sense also because of the row I left off on, maybe. I left off symmetrically with the row I started, but I, again, still think that wouldn't matter because every other side is going to be different, right? Like you wouldn't be able to put a bead here. And so I wouldn't be able to put a bead here. And so it's just gonna, I think the crystals will line up. But if you wanted to work it all from one side, that's a great transition into here's how to add thread. And that might make sense. And you could also leave, if you're working one of those multi-column designs, maybe leave more than 40 inches at your start. So you can do the whole swoop with just one strand. That's another good idea to try. So let's go ahead and do that unless anyone has any questions here on crystal adding. I feel like it's so dark. It's hard to see, but I don't see anything pop up, but feel free to if you come up with something. And let's grab that fire bracelet. So here's how much I have left. This is my working thread. I stopped at about 10, 11 inches or so, and I'm going to leave it alone and bring in a new strand here. And this is a sample that I absolutely am going to finish because I am excited about this color. The color is really pretty. And it actually kind of has like a warm Thanksgiving glow to it, like a campfire glow. Okay, so there's my new strand. Again, this was my old strand and it got short, about 10 inches, leaving it alone. And I want to weave to exit from that spot and just do some turns. And so this is a harder stitch to do turns on because all the beads are going a certain direction. So you can't just, you know, go from here and just turn. It would change the structure of your net, right? There's nowhere to turn here. That wouldn't bring those beads too close together. Or, I mean, you could, but you'd want to be gentle about it. But what I actually did was kind of the longer way. I just wove up and down. So you can just pick a spot somewhere, but the goal being to exit from over here. And so what I'm doing is just traveling up through a row. And that tail thread's in the way, and my old working thread is over here, just getting that out of the way. And it's the same goal we have with a lot of our stitches where here's the new one I'm bringing in. I really want that to stop moving when I pull on it. And I think it's going to take me some weaving around to get there because we don't have natural turns other than the end of each row turning, right? But what we do have is zigzag. So I came up through here and I went through here and I'm zigging back. So now I'm in this net point here, right? And so I'm going to travel back this way. In what is essentially a zigzag pattern. And sorry if I missed a question there. I saw something pop up. Let's do a little test. We're about halfway through that row, or more than halfway through. Here's our added thread. And it still moves pretty readily. So continuing. But so far, I've just been headed in one direction, right? And from here, and this is how you'd weave in if you were trying to weave in a new strand for adding crystal. Also, if you wanted to reinforce this way, you could too. All right, so now I'm going to turn again and come back down. So basically I zigzagged up, just kind of zigzagged up this way. Now I'm heading back down. Let's do another little test really quick. It's tight. So I don't want to disturb the structure of my stitches there, but it's already tight enough. So from here, I'm going to aim for that spot. And I feel like it's good, and then we'll trim that. And then we can keep going. And if you guys are game, I'll do a stitch or two with this extra configuration so you can see that it's truly exactly the same with just an extra set of 5 on there. And again, this one was the 21 bead start. So just kind of randomly going through. I've got a lot of thread I'm working with here. And go this way, least resistance, right? Okay, and there you go. Meeting at the same spot. Some folks would not hear. I really don't recommend that because you need your net points clear for your crystal. If you're just doing a net stitch, you can get away with it, but the temptation to do a knot here with the old and new thread is not zero, but again, I wouldn't want to do a knot there just because you might need to get through there later, and having a knot in the way is kind of a pain. So, so I don't do it, but I mean, you could. So pushing down, pulling up, trim that, and look, new thread here. My old thread's here. I'm going to leave my old thread in place for a little while, and then I'm going to bring it up into my new rows, like I like to do. And again, when I bring this new, sorry, the old thread up into the new rows, I'm going to zigzag. And come back down and zigzag, and then trim it. And so that's kind of a wide example because this is like a much wider piece, but oh, is it pretty? Really gorgeous. Okay, so let's see. Oh yeah, I'm seeing this in the text there. Yeah, there's in the chat, you're saying that finding the 3-packs. Well, for sure they're online, and like I can't get out. Me personally, I'm stuck at home a lot. My kids were sick like for the last literally like 2 weeks. I had one or the other home, and so I actually order online, and they deliver so fast. It's pretty good. So you can type in the SKU numbers, and we did an unboxing, and on our blog, if you go to blog.johnbead.com, you can find the PDF where all of these 3-packs are. It has all of these SKU numbers, so you can type them into the app, and they'll just ship it right to your house. Also, my Michaels does a delivery, and the fee to deliver same day to your house is like, I think it's $9 or $10, which is, you know, it's a lot, but it's if it's that or can't get the beads today, I don't know. Sometimes I could be talked into spending the $9. So it's pretty good. Yeah, it's like a DoorDash for beading. Hello, whoever thought of that is my best friend. And yeah, so we added thread, we did the crystals, and from here on out, we're just kind of in the realm of questions and anything else that you guys want to see, anything I didn't do well, I could demo again, or you can see different colors going. I can embellish this other one. Let me know what you think. I think I did see at least one question about the 9 start. And that's probably where I'll go from here, if demo the 9 count. All right, that's a good idea. Thanks, Sharon. Let's do that. Okay, so I'm going to bring these off of the mat for a second and bring the 9 count over. I have a lot of threads going on over here, guys. There's like a lot of thread. So I wasn't sure how many times I'd have to demo the crystals, so I had a bunch ready, and they're everywhere. So the 9 count looks like this, and showing it next to the 15 count here. Really pretty, same pattern, but you'd use less crystals, which is a kind of a bonus there too. Like maybe you've only got a partial, like a couple strands left or something. So I'm going to use the same colors to demo that. These guys here. Let's get some thread. And I'm going to flatten the end. Ooh, that's going to be hard to work with. Let's fix that. There we go. Okay. And I have a needle over here. And again, that's a size 12. Still working with my 12 here. So for how much length to cut, again, it's a lot, but not as much if you're working with this design. Doesn't take as much thread. You could probably get away with a more comfortable working length. And you could maybe trim that 40-inch tail down to like 32 or something, or 35. Okay. So same as before, but this time we're just going to pick up 9. And I forgot the stop bead, guys. So I'm just going to throw my stop bead on this side. Let's pick up a stop bead, put that on there. And nice long tail for embellishing later. Stop bead. 9 beads. Okay, here's my next set of 6. I'm going to skip the first 2 and go through the third. And you'll get that same little P shape that we had from before. And now I'm going to pick up 5 beads. There's 5. And let's skip the next 5 and go through the 6th bead there. My tail's getting in the way here. And so what you'll have, I'm just going to get the tail to sit kind of like over on that side for clarity there. You'll get the same thing we had before, but you've only got really just the one segment there, right? Plus the turning segment. Here, let's tighten all that up. I'm going to pull on the stop bead. And let's switch to the green now. So here's our turning 6 beads, right? Got the 6 beads here. And I'm going to come back here and go through the 3rd bead. All right, so we're skipping the first 2 and going through the 3rd. Same trick here for making it tighter. If you feel like it's loose, just want to pull on this side first and then pull on that side. Get better pop there. 5 beads is the next that I need to pick up. Skip the first 2, going to go through the 3rd bead. And I'm going to pull tight there. So there's that. I'm going to go back to the yellow now. 4, 5, and 6. And skip those first 2, and then just go through the 3rd there. And that one kind of worked out without me having to really do that little turn thing, the tightening. Lucky one there. There's the 5, skip the first 2 and go through the 3rd. So pretty. And 6 beads to turn. Skip the first 2, go to the 3rd one there. That one looks like it's going to need tightening. And 5. And so you just keep going like that. And it's so fun that I just want to keep going. It's an enjoyable stitch, honestly. It's one that I think is fun to create. Just the actual process of it is enjoyable. You know how like some stitches, it's not, I can't wait to be done with this bracelet. This one is one of those ones where it comes together so pretty that it's rewarding in the moment, right? Here's 3 and 4 and 5. And then I'm going to come up through this bead here. All right. Oops, I was supposed to do yellow. No one called me out on that. I did strayed from my pattern a little bit, but my goal is to kind of go A, B, C, B, A, B, C, and back and forth, but it still works. And so to embellish your crystals here, it's the same thing you'd want to weave to exit from your little net point here, but this one will only have 1 crystal per row. You'd put a crystal here, and then you would put a crystal there, and then you'd put a crystal in between those 2 points. So it would just go crystal, 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 crystal. So just go, and it saves you a little bit of crystals there. Let's see if there's any other steps I can demo. We've got lots and lots of time. So even if you want to see the bigger start, we could do the 21 one. It's the same thing, but it's really cool looking. It looks really nice. I'll lay them all out together too, so you can see again what they look like. And Sharon, is that a yes for seeing the big one? Yeah, okay, yeah, let's do that. That way, just if anyone wants to work through that on their own, there's a reference. Okay, get all my strings going here. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is a tangled mess over here. Okay, and my Wildfire is here. Just flattening the end there, gonna get this threaded. I'm gonna remember my stop bead this time. Okay, so here's the stop bead going on. I'm gonna string that, bring it down. And since I'm just demoing, I'm not leaving the full tail that I should, but just to show getting there. So let's pick up 21 beads now. So it's going to take a minute, but it is cool looking. And so I'll count those in fives, just a little easier for me. So there's 10, 15, 20 plus 1. And just checking my counts here. There's my 5, 5, and 5, 5, and 1. So that one's good. And now same thing. We're going to pick up the 6 beads that we use for our turn start. So there's our 6. And we're going to skip the first 2 beads and go through the 3rd bead there. So there's that. And now I need 5. And I'm going to skip 5 and go through the 6th bead. So here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's the 6th bead. And this part can be a little bit tedious, just counting the little beads like that, but you only have to do it once, because after this, it all kind of shows up really nicely. Okay, same thing here, 5 more. There's 5, and we're going to skip up the next 5, and then go through the 6th one. So far, so good. If yours are turning like this on you, your stitch is still going to work, but the colors help. I want my colors to line up, so I'm going to go ahead and try to keep these turned. A little bit like peyote in that way. Notice it more on these wider pieces. So there's 5. Skipping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if everything worked out well, I've got only one last bead to go through, ignoring my stop bead. And since we're working in different colors, it's easy to see that this is spinning on me, and I'll know to work into the right color. But if you were working with the same color, it might be a little harder to see, but the good news is it doesn't matter. It's kind of just like peyote in that way. It only matters if you're trying to consistent a pattern. So here's my next color. So again, starting with 6, because we're doing a turn. And then we're going to go through our 3rd bead from the last row. And I might do a little tightening turn here. There's that one. And now 5 from here on out. So here's 5. Skipping the next 2 and then going through the midpoint there. This would have so much crystal on it. It would be a really statement. So kind of a pricey piece once you add all that crystal, but wow factor is wow. There's 5 and going through the center here. And so there's row 3. And then I'm going to need more yellow really quick. and 6 beads to turn. And then we're just going to skip those first 2 and then go through the third one there. Dropped it. So yeah, this is really easy, same steps, but you just want to add an extra section. You can add more sections too if you wanted to. There's how many beads there? Oops, that's 1 too many. I want 5. Skip the first 2, go through the center, midpoint, third bead of the next segment. Yeah, I mean, the sky's the limit here. If you wanted to make this even wider, you could. And so I just think that it makes more sense once you've done one that's a little bit like once you've stitched it a couple times, because it adds complexity. But that's the only difference. It's just, it's a little more wonky on you. It's going to get loose in different places because you're working with such a wide piece, right? But now from here where I am, it's easy now to keep going. It was just those first 2 rows. They're just kind of a little more wiggly, and that spin thing that's happening, but totally doable. And especially with the 2 colors, if you're trying to maintain a pattern or anything like that. Yeah, but from here, it's super easy.
Danielle, the time goes by so fast. I always think we have so much time, but now I'm watching the clock, and I did want to make sure I wanted to answer Cindy's question for some advice and tips for ideas for the closures.
Yes, yeah, let's talk about that. Definitely. And so, oh, I see your question, Sharon. Did I reinforce it? No, I didn't. I didn't do it this time. I should have. I just forgot. I've been really lazy about reinforcing lately, but yeah, when we created our first 2 rows, we could have gone back through just one more time to lock it in. I do think that's the answer, because doing it at that stage is probably easier than doing it at the end. That said, you can just take your tail thread and maybe from here you would bring it up through the green, back through, and then you'd be able to do this and then just kind of make another trip through, hit that one more time, and you'd be back where you started. More than one way to do that. No direct easy path that I can think of, unless one of you guys out there has a better idea. But I feel like it's just kind of like, oh, gotta weave around a bunch, right? So not ideal, but definitely a good idea. Okay, so let's see, closure. Let's talk about closures. And closures is easy. I have this one here to show. And actually, I should bring this one back too, since this one has the crystals on it. This might be a better way to demo it. But all you'll really need to do is, I had on this configuration felt like it was okay to just put my jump ring here and my other jump ring here. And that's how I did it on the finished piece. Let me bring that one back. And so you can tell they're not totally symmetrical with each other, but that's a lot less noticeable on this length than it was here. But what you are doing is you're putting one here and you're putting one here. A jump ring here and a jump ring there. Here, same thing, but it just doesn't look as asym, right? Because it's longer, they're further away from each other. If you want to do something more like level up, if you wanted to do something different, there's a lot of stuff you could do here. You could get a bar. That was one idea I had, was a bar that has 3 loops on it. And those are at Michael's. I've seen them a couple different versions of bars, but you could do 3 jump rings for this one. On this other one, it would be 4. This other one here. I think they have a 4 configuration one too. This one you'd have 4 jump rings, and you could put the bar, and that would make it symmetrical too on the sides, because you would have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't have one of those in front of me, but I know they have them because we've used them in the past. We used them on the pennant. Do you guys remember the pennant earrings? Those like triangle square stitch earrings. The bar we used in that class would work here really nice if you're doing this long one, because I believe those had 4 holes. To do a 3-hole bar, off the top of my head, can't remember if they have a 3-hole bar. I feel like they do. It's going to be in those creations on one of the like, you know, side side displays, those creations, but they were on clearance last time I was at the shop. So I don't know how many are there, but I saw like there was a triangle shaped one. But another thing you could do is like a connector ring, you know, like a beautiful ring. And you could probably bring 2 jump rings into that ring. Would be another way. But Cindy, I think you're asking about something more grand than that. Like, I feel like you're trying to do a button. Am I right? Yeah, I think you're doing, is that a button? Are you having that in mind? I feel like it's possible. I feel like it would be good. So, let's think. Okay, so from here, I would make one of these loops bigger. So when we added 5 here as a net point, what if you just did a bunch and it became like a button loop? You could even maybe combine 2 sides or something like that. And then over here, your button could be directly stitched out of one of the net points, or even the shank attached through one of these, just stitched through the shank on one side. And it would bend up. And you could even like, I think what I would do is actually that I would go through my button shank. So when I'm stringing one of these 5, bring it through the button shank there, and then I would make more rows under it, like above it, and it would make that button sit on the top. And then on this side, I would make a loop some way. I would have to play with it, honestly, because I'm not sure what would look cool, and it would matter what button you're using and how you wanted that to sit when it's clasped, but like a center loop coming out of here or a big loop coming around, right, to go over that button, which would also be kind of like floating on top of the work, just like the crystals. Like it would just be kind of like floating there. You could even put crystals on the other side of it a little bit. Although the seed beads would have to go over the crystal. Well, goodness, now I know what my next project is. Because now I need to see it, right? Can you see one of those big, beautiful, like check glass buttons just sitting like right there? Gorgeous. And maybe that would be the focal of the design. Also, other types of beads will work here, like as just layering and making a very beautiful stitching design on the top. Like even some of your brick stitch. If you do a really beautiful, let me bring this over. You could stitch a brick stitch focal onto the center of it, and it would just be like, it would come all the way around, and then you'd have this like focal piece on it. So it becomes a base for many things. That's how I feel like this is so versatile in that way. And because you can anchor things to these net points, it becomes a base that's really easy to stitch into. Like there's obvious places to make it connect and things like that.
Danielle, Cindy's even saying if you make a crystal beaded button and a simple loop of seed beads.
Oh, oh gosh. You know what? That's a cool idea. And I wonder if we could do a crystal beaded button. Maybe we should do something like that.
Felicia found the connector bars and she's putting it in the link.
Oh, Felicia, you're awesome. Thank you. Thank
you. I think,
cool.
Danielle, like what I love about this conversation is, what if you don't have any crystal? And crystal is expensive. I understand that. This netted bracelet would look so beautiful as is, but with a focal button, and it would still be a showstopper. So if anyone is wondering, if they don't have the crystal, go through your button stash for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And my head's kind of turning on ways that you could embed a buttonhole, because what you could do is just skip the net points on a row and then resume catching those net points after that row, and you would have a buttonhole.
Yeah, Cindy also commented, if Wanda was here today, she would want to know how to add leather.
Oh yeah, so that would be beautiful. And I would honestly just take some leather and just loop it through one of these, or even in 2 places, and you'd have 2 strands, and you could do one of those slide connectors on suede or something beautiful like that.
Ooh, yes.
Oh, now this would keep picturing this with a suede closure on it. How cool would that be? And you could stack it with our other one that we did. Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah, I need like, 4 days to just bead. Nothing else, just beading. No cooking for people. None of that stuff. Just beading, right?
Danielle, earlier today in the comments, somebody was commenting on what a great teacher you are.
Oh, thank you so much.
Again, thank you so much for exposing. So most of us who are taking these classes with you are just either re-enjoying our beadworks and beading that we learned in the past, or are totally new to beading because of you. So again, thank you so much for everything you do to make these classes easy. Um, I'm sitting here thinking I've already made 6 when I haven't actually picked up a needle yet, but I'm sure I'm going to get to make one this weekend. But I did want to, I wanted to give you a minute or two to just talk about next week. And you're right on time.
All right, cool. Yeah, I love it when the timing works out. Always so nervous about timing. Like, oh my gosh. Let's see. So next week we have we're getting into gift season, so something super beginner friendly. Some cute bangles. And this one is just so easy to make a stacker and tie a little ribbon and give as a gift for family and friends. So this one's going to be really fun. And so what I would suggest grabbing, if you don't want to do these colors, you can grab any of our 6-0 mixes. And on Michael's, they did an e-blast once where they used this one. And how cool would that look? It would just be it looks to me like a winter January snow theme, like a little polar bear kind of style. I don't know. I would put it in a box with a little polar bear sticker on it. And so that's next week. Yeah, that's next Friday. And then we have the crystal earrings, which this is flat chenille. We did flat chenille as a bracelet back in November of 2020. And this is the same stitch, but it's just done as a small little bib as a way to support some pretty fringe. And I figured, Sharon, you'd like this one because it's got the black and white crystal together. How cool. This one, I've been wearing these. I put them back on the board before class, but they've just been like rotating through my my wardrobe. They're really cool. And I used some stainless steel findings, which I thought looked really cool with the design.
So Danielle, we just want to remind you that you are not teaching next week because it's Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah.
So it is that the next class is in 2 weeks and this one's in 3 weeks.
Yeah, you're right. It's December 1st, right?
Yes. No, and Peggy's already made the stacker bracelets. So
really?
Yeah, that sounds great.
I don't have my gallery view up, so I don't know if she's holding them up. Let me try to switch to my gallery.
I don't think she has them up, but she couldn't wait.
Finish them. Yeah, that is so cool. Oh, Cindy's holding hers up.
Cindy came late to the class, and yet she's almost finished.
I'm not surprised. She probably made 4 of them by now.
Yeah, and she started over.
Oh, that is so cool. Wow, I like the colors too. Oh, and then the last one, but not least.
Paula's done too.
Oh, really? Oh, wow, Paula, and you did the blue colors. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, that's awesome, Paula. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, you guys are fast. You've already got the stitching done. I've been trying to I used some vanishing cord on this as like a way to hang it, but here is the next workshop, and it's actually our last class of 2022. So I wanted to do something kind of big and just, a little more bold and a little more technical. And although the stitching here we've done together before in lots of different classes, it's just putting it all together in something that's a little more time consuming, a little more building the pyramids kind of project, right? It's something you don't do all at once, but we can talk through it and we can support each other working on it over a longer period of time. Over like the holidays, we can share progress photos or something. And so this is like a little poinsettia, and the fringe, of course, optional. Definitely raises it up a notch if you put the fringe and the crystal on there. But this is like a deep dive into a brick stitch project that takes a long time to put together. It's challenging because I used round beads instead of delicas. And in some of our last classes that we've done brick stitch together, we've been using like a cylinder bead, which pops together and makes it pretty beginner friendly. But when you're working with the rounds, they don't do what you want. You have to kind of make them sit the right places, and I'll show some tricks and tips for that. But this one's going to be kind of epic. I'm going to have a couple samples going where they're in different steps because there's increases, decreases, and lots of weaving around if you're doing the fringe. But beautiful and very fun and rewarding to have done. And so it could be an earring. It's heavy. I think it weighs a lot for an earring, but it could become like a pendant, or you could just not do so much fringe. you can change up the fringe configuration, or it would be a beautiful earring just brick stitch without the fringe. And so I'll have a bunch of versions of it like that ready to go by the end of next month. And then of course, I'm probably going to do more patterns. Like this was just the first one. I have a dream of doing like a Christmas bird, like a holiday bird, or something to, along that lines, like maybe a holly, something to bring in some green. So I have a few patterns I'm experimenting with. And if I get those ready, which I probably will, have those bonuses, we'll drop them in the chat and stuff. But yeah, so that's our last one. And then of course the bangles and the crystal. Those are going to be our next 3. Did I forget anything? Carmi, am I forgetting?
No, I think you've got it.
I got it. Okay. I'm going to switch to, let's see here. I'm going to add. Oh, I added myself. Cool. I've been learning how to do some of the like little, oh, thanks, Felicia. I'm not as good at it like yet, but I'm figuring out how to navigate on the Zoom platform. But I want to say thank you to you guys for being here. And I hope you were inspired and that you'll create lots of beautiful things this weekend. And if you want to share with us, of course, hashtag make it with Michaels. And if you do hashtag John Bead, we'll see it in the social media posts. And of course, we have our Facebook group where you can post too. That's PDFs and projects by John Bead. And if you're not already there, it's a great place to see a lot of inspiration. So yeah. And if you need to find me, I'm at Danielle Wickes Jewelry, and feel free to contact me. And also danielle.wickes@johnbead.com. Another way to reach me. All right, so have a great weekend, guys. Lots of hugs and hearts for you. And happy beading.